On 5/12/1945, the U.S. Navy's Avenger torpedo carrier squadron took off from Fort Lauderdale. It was a routine training flight. 5 planes were to drop training torpedoes on a tentative target only 300 miles in the air. After 2 hours at the airfield, they were already waiting for the Avengers to land. But instead, they received a message that horrified the dispatchers. "We have an emergency situation. We are off course. We do not see the ground. I repeat, we do not see the ground. Keep heading west. It's not working. We can't get a bearing. We can't see the sun. Even the ocean doesn't look the same. It seems like we're kind of sinking into whitewater. We are completely lost. Don't follow us. They look like they are out of the universe." According to reports from Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the squadron commander, the pilots did not see the sun, but they did see something else. Who or what did Lieutenant Taylor see? In the last seconds of their earthly lives, 5 airplanes remained a mystery, and 14 pilots were not destined to return. They disappeared without a trace in the vast area called the Bermuda Triangle. 76 ships and over 100 airplanes have disappeared here in the last 150 years alone. Sailors and pilots crossing the Bermuda Triangle have nightmares, as the details of the tragedy remain unknown. The Bermuda Triangle is located in the Atlantic between the coasts of Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. It is one of the busiest sea and air crossroads on the way from the old to the new. The mysteries of the triangle were first encountered by a man named Christopher Columbus on September 13, 1492. He recorded in the ship's log of the caravel Santa Maria. "On entering the sea, which I called the Sargasso Sea, the hand of the compass, instead of pointing to the polar star, began an incomprehensible dance. The sea was glowing in a strange way. Suddenly storms were replaced by a dead calm, and here and there were foaming whirlpools. From time to time the ships were enveloped by a strange fog. Sailors whispered among themselves about the wiles of the devil and demanded to turn back." In the 20th century, this area was well studied. At one time, here actively searched for oil, black gold scientists did not find anything anomalous, and tragic cases were attributed to bad weather conditions. There are no anomalous physical fields of the Earth in the area of the Bermuda Triangle. There are no anomalies of gravity, no anomalies. The only thing that could really explain the phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle is that there are typhoons, hurricanes, which hit Florida. But there are other latitudes that get storms all the time. Sailors call them the Roaring Forties and Furious 60s. So why exactly in the area of Bermuda do airplanes disappear without a trace? Is there a triangle phenomenon? Can we trust the impressionable sailors of Columbus or the proponents of improbable ideas? But there are also many people in basic science who doubt that these facts are explainable. The facts of the destruction of a number of ships and a whole squadron of American airplanes. A reasonable explanation has not yet found. 4:03:9 on this day, the U.S. Navy support ship Cyclops disappeared without a trace, together with 309 crew members. At first, it was supposed that Cyclops was torpedoed by a German submarine or exploded on a mine, but even in these cases, the ship should have had time to give the signal SOS. Soon the war ended. It turned out that on the navigational charts of German submarines, this area was not indicated, which gave the command of the U.S. Navy to declare the disappearance of the Cyclops is one of the most mysterious secrets in the history of our Navy. 20th years in the same square missing American and Norwegian ships, and again there is not even a hint of bad weather distress signal and traces of shipwreck. And only in 24 years on the shore caught intermittent signal from the dying Japanese dry cargo ship Raiku Maru sounded. It was like a dagger blow. We can't save ourselves. That's all he managed to convey for the sake of the signal. Why did well-functioning ships in calm weather instantly go underwater without taking any steps to rescue and without reporting their trouble to the shore? Experienced sailors recalled old legends that at times the sea in the Bermuda Triangle parted and terrible monsters instantly swallowed the ships. It was hard to assume that sea tales would find supporters in the face of scientists, though in a slightly different interpretation. One of the modern hypotheses that the ships sink and disappear with the crew is the hypothesis of gas hydrates. When pressed under great pressure, methane, going into the water and dissolves, forms a vacuum of such density and like a void in which the ships fall through. But why did the airplanes disappear? That's harder to explain. Over millions of years, dead marine organisms decompose and release methane. At the very bottom, it forms so-called crystalline hydrates, an amorphous mass resembling wet snow. This snowball lies quietly on the ocean floor until it is disturbed by something. The bottom of the Sargasso Sea is very turbulent. There is a whole range of underwater volcanoes which periodically erupt. Emissions of heat commensurate with nuclear power plants and nuclear power plants in comparison with these emissions is just a trifle. Heated by the energy released from the bowels of the earth, the hydrate turns back into pure methane, which with terrible force rushes to the surface of the ocean. The recent innocent snow becomes a killer, the water turns into boiling foam. At the same time, its density significantly decreases, and the law of Archimedes no longer helps ships to stay afloat. Ship in seconds falls into the abyss. This is such a monster, in fact, turned out to be a hydrate bottom, which immediately raises up huge columns of foam, and this gas raises up actually drags down any floating vehicle. It seemed that the mystery of the sudden disappearance of ships was solved, but skeptics ask why for several decades of careful monitoring of our planet from space have not been found. Facts of similar methane emissions, modern equipment would easily fix them, and disappeared in the triangle, not only ships. 5/12/1945 on the shore waited for confirmation of Avenger on readiness to land. But at 15:15 came an alarming message. We have an emergency situation. We are off course. We do not see the ground. Repeat, we can't see land. Keep heading west. We don't know where west is. We can't see the sun. They look like they're from the universe. Dispatchers are getting discouraged. Even if the magnetic storm knocked out all the compasses, the pilots could easily navigate by the sun and take a course to the west. In this case, to miss the coast of Florida stretched to the south was simply impossible. What was the reason for the failure of instruments at the same time at 5 disappeared Avengers? And what mysterious fogs at a height of 2 kilometers hid from the pilots of the sun? It is possible that the torpedo carriers affected the source of some unknown science of radiation. But what? A few years ago, American oceanographers discovered in the center of the triangle, at the bottom of the ideal flat plain of 8,000 square kilometers. However, soon the information about the underwater research was declared by the U.S. Navy strategic and strictly classified. The finds made by marine archaeologists in recent years convinced that on the bottom of the Atlantic in the area of the infamous triangle rests the remains of an ancient civilization. Perhaps it is part of Atlantis of the huge island, gone to the bottom as a result of some unknown to U.S. natural cataclysm. The nature of the structures found on the bottom makes us believe that the people who lived in these cities possessed technologies that are unknown to modern mankind. And although, except for the findings of archaeologists, the idea of an advanced civilization on the ocean floor is confirmed only by ancient myths, the number of its supporters is growing day by day. Some experts are inclined to link the drama in the Bermuda Triangle with the presence of a mysterious energy source on the ocean floor, which its owners protect from outsiders at all costs. While researchers argue, the sad list of victims of the Devil's Triangle continues to grow. One hypothesis after another turns out to be untenable. Back in the late 19th century, it became clear that tragedies in the Bermuda Triangle can be quite unexpected. 4/12, born 1872, the brigantine Maria Celeste left New York for Gehenna with a large shipment of liquor. A month later, she was discovered in the ocean by the crew of the schooner. Doigy sailors were surprised that the brigantine was going on some strange tack and did not respond to the signalman when the sailors boarded the Maria Celeste with the schooner. Their hair stood up. They did not find a single member of the crew remembered about the sirens, drawing sailors into the abyss of the ocean with their marvelous voices, about the mysterious voice of the sea. Many years later, scientists have made a hypothesis to some extent confirming the ancient maritime legends. As for the Flying Dutchman, the facts are recorded historically met yachts warm. Dinner, it has not yet cooled down. Not a single crew member is not. Even crew members were found with horrible grimaces on their faces. All this, in all likelihood, is precisely the effect of infrasound waves. On the scientists believe that low-frequency sound vibrations are the companions of natural disasters, and not only hurricanes, but also earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Their impact on the human body can have very sad consequences. Theories of infrasound influence on living organisms gives an explanation for such phenomena, as mass suicides of whales and dolphins, which are thrown ashore for no apparent reason. In 1946, the abandoned ship City Belle was found near the Bahamas. 2 years earlier, the ghost ship Rubicon was constantly seen drifting without crew along the Florida coast, with only a dog on board. What was it that caused crews to abandon a serviceable vessel in preference to the utter danger of the ocean? Danger, a sense of danger, yes, instilled a sense of fear. An overwhelming sense of fear, because as anyone on the open ocean realized that there were sharks and all sorts of dangers out there. But the sense of fear was stronger when they were on a ship. In the mid-50s in the States was unwittingly put an experiment that shed light on the degree of influence of infrasound on the human psyche. A horror movie was shown in a theater. Scientists used a generator of ultra-low sound. It caused an increased sense of fear. It ended very badly. People fled from fear. The crush began. There were a lot of victims. 5/12/1945, Fort Lauderdale Air Force Base. The last minutes of the tragic flight of the Avengers were broadcast live on the air. The listeners were only those who were in the flight control center. The pilots were floundering in search of land. They changed course so often that soon not the pilots or the dispatchers themselves could not establish the position of the planes. The denouement was inexorably approaching. The fuel would run out around 18 hours. The base heard Tyler give the command. "As soon as any of you have 10 gallons of fuel left, let me know. We'll get on the water together." 2 Mariner flying boats are dispatched to search for the Avengers, but the rescuers found no one. One of the planes did not return to base at all. Together with the machine missing 13 crew members, no message from them on the ground. But the faint signal from the Avenger received for an hour after the last drop of fuel should have been exhausted, and this is perhaps the biggest mystery in the history of the Link 19. 5/06/1965, 20 years later, an American military transport plane C-1 Wayne with 9 crew members took off from Homestead Base. The plane did not return to the airfield. No explosions were seen in the air or when it hit the water. But American astronaut James McDevitt, who was orbiting the Gemini 4 spacecraft, saw and photographed an unidentified flying object that was hovering over the Caribbean islands at the time of the C-119 crash, as no bodies of the missing crew members or the airplanes and ships themselves were found. There were so many sightings of mysterious aliens in the ocean that Fleet Command developed a special instruction for ship commanders when encountering anomalous phenomena. The precautions were designed on the assumption that we were dealing with intelligent beings. The U.S. Navy officially denies any unknown forces in the area. According to eyewitnesses, secret, the object moves underwater very quickly. There is no noise of propellers. The speed of about 120-130 knots or 240 kilometers per hour. Man has not yet been able to create apparatus that would move underwater at a speed of more than 200 kilometers per hour. Such speeds are unavailable, and marine life eyewitnesses have no doubt that it was a meeting with aliens. The military is interested in the first place, whether there is a danger of collision with aliens, because apparently they are at a much higher stage of development. And if any military conflict with aliens happens, the result is easy to predict. Reckless pilots who are famous for their bravado tried several times to approach, to get in contact with aliens. Well, all ends quickly. Objects slipped away with lightning speed, or pilots lost consciousness and died or managed to wake up a moment before the crash and straighten the machine. June 3, 1985, in the middle of a cruising race on sailboats across the Atlantic near the Bahamas, the schooner Marquez goes off the course. Her finishing line was the ocean abyss. At the bottom went to the bottom 18 crew members. But this time, the Triangle left a witness. Helmsman Philip Paxton managed to surface. According to him, the storm hit unexpectedly. The sea was foaming. A giant wave hit the Marquez. He buried his nose in it and went underwater. It was over in 45 seconds. In the Bermuda Triangle, there is often a complete calm, and suddenly a small cloud appears. There is a strong evening, and in 3 or 4 minutes, a giant funnel is formed. And after 5 minutes of complete calm, and the cloud dissipates. If in this place was a yacht, a boat, a small vessel, it would disappear. Only recently, the veil of mystery has been lifted from one terrible manifestation of the forces of nature. For many years, the official oceanology denied the existence of the so-called killer waves of 30 or more meters high. One of the legends of the Bermuda Triangle has now become a section of science. From century to century, sailors have told tales of the ninth shaft. Studies have confirmed such phenomena when, after a series of ordinary waves, suddenly there is a giant fatal wave that crashes on the ship and ruins it. Calculations oceanologists have shown that in the world's oceans for 300 ordinary waves, there is one killer wave. But in the Bermuda Triangle, they are many times more. There begins the most capricious current. It is here that cyclones and anticyclones arise, which then spread across the planet. Bermuda Triangle is not in vain considered the kitchen of the weather, but only the recipes of this kitchen to understand no one has not yet been able to. Now it is known that every third ship wrecked in the world ocean became a victim of the killer wave. 23.07.1991, specially equipped ship Deep Saye is searching for sunken 400 years ago Spanish galleon with gold. The participants of the expedition know about the tragedy of the Avenger airplanes in 1945. They know that it happened in these places, and the thought about it does not leave the researchers. When the operator's voice was heard over the loudspeaker, below us the hulls of 5 airplanes similar in outline to the Avengers on the deck of the Deep Saye, there was a sepulchral silence. The video camera showed the first numbers of the airplanes matched the numbers of the disappeared machines. The cockpit lanterns were tightly closed, but the pilot's remains were not in them. It seemed we were half a step away from solving one of the most intricate mysteries. But experts immediately had a lot of questions. Why are the planes lying only 10 kilometers from the Lauderdale base? But at the same time, the last minutes of communication with the planes were very bad, which proves their removal from the base. Retired Lieutenant Cole Don Pull, 46, was convinced that the Avengers had fallen into the ocean near the Bahamas. But it turns out they were just a little short of the base. He didn't believe what was on TV, and he was right, it wasn't the Avengers. They said so the next day. The second part of the numbers on the airplanes did not match the numbers of Link 19. Moreover, the airplanes with such numbers were not listed in the U.S. Naval Aviation at all. The authorities couldn't explain anything clearly. So what are these planes? We can assume they were teleported here, but from where? Or someone fixed the flight numbers, but why? And how did the crews, leaving the planes in an emergency, find the time and energy to close the cabin lanterns tightly? There are no answers to these questions. But the old dispatcher shed light on some other mysteries of that day. All who were present at that moment at the control and communication tower were amazed when they had already buried the pilots, heard the pilots talking to each other, in which they were discussing where to fly, without saying a word about the fact that they were already running out of fuel. But the miracle did not happen, and soon the airwaves went silent, and 21 at Fort Lauderdale Airfield turned off the lights. If the Avengers found underwater by the expedition Deep SIA are not the same, another version was recalled. If the engines ran 2.5 hours longer, which is also not clear how, perhaps Link 19 was in a time loop, a white fog. Researchers believe that the vanished ships and airplanes went into another dimension, where they continued or continued to exist. Take a snippet from the interstellar passage of the black hole. For most of the inhabitants of Earth, this version is fantastic and frightening. It remains only to speculate how events develop in such a time rift. There are many hypotheses that people are trying to explain the events occurring in the Bermuda Triangle, but there is no single and clear one yet. Bermuda Triangle is not an exception. There are other similar places in the world. The analog is located in the same latitudes as Bermuda, south of the coast of Japan. There are also missing ships and airplanes. There are temporary failures, and there is also no explanation for what is happening. But you and I will try to figure it out. Subscribe to the channel to not miss the disclosure of the history of the Bermuda Triangle and other mysteries of the universe.